Hello and most welcome to 1070 of the Heidegger series. And we are currently filming here at Söder, as it's called in Stockholm, Tantolunden, an area with small little huts, very lovely decorated and gardened. And today we are going to talk about awareness, intention and choice. It's an article by the famous author Don Beer, all coming from evocations, exhibitions, extensions and excavation. Edited by the venerable Jack Petranker. And let's put in the mic. We are going to audit this with a so-called, I don't know what it's called in English, in Swedish called a mosquito. Hole is on the side. Check that it's running, so it's in, yeah, that's it. Still going on. Should be a red square. Back off a bit here. For once I have a cameraman, our good friend Henrik Gustafsson, who had the nicety to bring me here. Don Beer is addressing in this article a grand problem, and this is something we often discussed within our group and outside the group. Jan has thought about it for decades, and it is those things with awareness, intention and choice. They are interrelated but are not the same. And whereas many languages in the East, like Sanskrit, Chinese, Korean, Japanese, Indonesian and Filipino, all have a lot of expressions and a long tradition of understanding the inner world of awareness, intention and choice. And that inner world is also an outer world. We are desperately lacking in any vocabulary in the West to sort of pinpoint to these things. And Don Beer writes in the beginning of the article into introduction that he's going to give it a try at this horribly lacking thing. And I would also like to do some parallels between Jacques Derrida and Martin Heidegger. Both of those people are mentioning these things because they are, in simple terms, what modus are. Modus is a special form of awareness, and Heidegger often points out the lack of understanding what modus is the main problem that we inherited from the Greek. And that will mean in the end that neglecting modus will make us blunt, and not being aware of how we regulate the outcome of both the inner world and the outer world. As you might remember, Dasein is something that is taking place simultaneously from the inside and the outside. And this is simultaneity is so hard to capture, and that's one of the reasons Martin Heidegger started his vocabulary with at least 60 to 70 new terms, his neologisms, mainly taken from Greek or German. We start simple here. The first paragraph, the relation among intention, choice, action and will. I will start with an everyday example. Let us say I have the intention of crossing a stream. There is a reason to cross. For example, I want something on the other side. A better view, flowers to pick, or safety. I have yet to move, since I have only formed the intention. To get to the other side, I must move. And that involves the decision to act, followed by the choice to move, followed by specific action to make the actual intention, as in the following figure here. I will just read the figure. I think it's sort of self-explanatory. Plan, which is the intention to reach a goal. Initiation of plan, that's the decision to act so as to attain the goal. Action choice, sequence of choice of action followed by action. And goal, reaching the goal. This should sort of reverberate within you. We're very happy to hear comments where you heard this before, because exactly the same thing was gone through around 400s in this series. He continues on the next paragraph. How I act involves a series of choices followed by actions, choices made at each step. Once I have formed the intention, I must still select what I will do. I could go directly across the stream, but I could also take any other route, no matter how indirect. Again, having the original intention or plan, I still might not decide to initiate that plan. For instance, I might delay beginning to cross until I find an easy opening in the underbrush. I might, having started, give up. Movement toward the goal requires an ongoing series of intention, choice, action sequences. Completing an initial series of actions does not guarantee I will complete the next until I eventually cross the stream. It might strike the reader that the distinction between choosing to do something and choosing to act on the choice make no sense, since it makes the first choosing to do a nullity. For instance, suppose a high school student chooses to go to college but never sends in an application. Wouldn't the best description be that the student never chose to go to college at all, but only pretended to self or others to have made that choice? Is a choice that does not lead to an action really a choice? I would respond that I use the word choice in a different way. Using my terminology, the high school student has formed the intention of going to college and seriously plans to do so, making this public by sharing it with others. To achieve that goal, at some point the student must engage in a number of actions, beginning with the application process, which itself has many steps and options, starting with a decision as to which colleges should be considered. The student might genuinely plan to go to college, but never decide to do so, or decide too late, or discover further down the road that the application process is overwhelming. Another everyday example is the plan to go on diet, which I should do. Once the plan is formed, the decision to begin might be postponed to after the first of the year or in time for summer. Next, the individual must choose what actions to take to accomplish the plan. For example, restrict calories, join a commercial weight loss program, or eliminate certain foods. To realize these plans requires a series of choice action sequences over weeks, if not months. Frequently, challenges arise to sticking with plans after its initiation. Tasty and forbidden food invites consumption, or hunger becomes difficult to tolerate. The plan must be maintained and reaffirmed at each and every step. Here, Beer goes into more detailed investigation, and although all of this sounds very familiar, you'll have to understand practically no one in the West has written about these things before, apart from, as I mentioned before, Derrida, Heidegger, and a third person. That third person you can guess about who that is, pointing to my colleague and friend Henry here. C comes. A more detailed investigation. In the diagram presented above, the words used are nouns, static and final. Experientially, however, awareness, intention and choice involve a process which suggests verbs, action-oriented words. With this in mind, let us now look more closely at the terms. Intention, taken from Random House Dictionary of the English Language, 2nd edition. Intention is linked to the verb intend, whose Latin root means to stretch toward or aim at, intendere. The dictionary offers as one definition, to have in mind as something to be done or brought about, plan. Intention, let us say, is the state of having a mental aim or direction, preparatory to decision, choice and action. Number 2, goal. A goal can be as lofty as enlightenment or as mundane as relieving the discomfort of an itch. The goal can be regarded as what intention directs, aims at, or stretches towards. Decision. A decision links to the verb decide, defined in the dictionary as to make up one's mind as to what shall be done and the way to do it. Choice links to the verb choose, which can mean a decision on one of a number of possibilities because of its apparent superiority. Decision and choice are similar, but in the context of this paper, decisions refer to the mental state associated with a commitment to achieve the goal, whereas choice refers to selecting a specific action from a number of possibilities. Returning to the diagram I earlier mentioned, I can have an intention without deciding to achieve it yet, or without acting. I might have the intention to quench my thirst by getting a drink of water, but not yet. I'll get that drink after I finish this paragraph. An intention is the mental pointing toward a goal, to reach the goal. I must decide to act on the intention. Each action is chosen from a variety of options and sculpts how I reach the goal. In the example of crossing the stream, as I proceed toward the stream, I might encounter obstacles. I might get tired, the weather might change, the stream might be too swift to ford, the footing might be slippery or marshy. Or I might discover rocks I can't negotiate. I might give up on my original intention. To continue requires will. I must maintain my intention in awareness. I must continue making choices about how to move toward it. And I must act on those choices in the face of inevitable obstacles and, very important, possible discomfort. To achieve any goal requires experience it as over there or not yet, and engaging in subject-initiated action to attain it. This structure demonstrates the subject's uniqueness in the world. I am one in some way distinct from and can influence the world around me. Vice versa, the world is distinct from me and can influence me. Here is a quote. Time is then handy. It expresses the distance between the self and its object, thus delineating and ensuring their difference according to the self's view. The power of time fragments, becoming the volition of the self on the one hand, and set in contrast to the energy of nature and physical processes on the other. TSK page 169. Most of the TSK exercises, that is time, space and knowledge, involve mental activity of one kind or another, whether observing experience, exploring awareness, or generating mental phenomena such as images. A struggle like that of crossing the stream can arise during these practices. Consider, for instance, the giant body exercise. I will link to that on later, in which the reader is asked to create the image of a living, giant human body in all its detail. I must first have the intention, decision, followed by the choice to engage in creating this image. Next, I engage in mental acts that bring into being various elements of the image. I begin, let us say, with a foot, and discover that I can generate clearly one, but not two toes. I can create a live, wiggling toe that has hair, real wrinkles at the joint, and even realistic texture to the skin. These details disappear when I add a second toe. I keep trying with the same disappointing result. I begin to get frustrated, then discover myself tired, a tiredness that seems associated with the effort of constructing the image. To succeed, I must continue despite the difficulties and obstacles. To continue requires will. And here is a different take on will altogether. This is the modus will. It's a term we don't even have in the English language, neither in the Swedish language. Intendere here means to have a decision but not acting on it yet, or acting on it within. And that within area cannot in the Western discourse be treated in a decent manner, because the blunt Cartesian division doesn't serve its purpose of clarifying, it's obscuring. Therefore, bluntly, everything is cut in half, and everything belonging to the subjective or the person becomes strictly internal, non-visible, not a part of knowledge. And this is the very place where we find mood. And this is one of the problems understanding being and time, because we don't have the words for it, and sometimes it can be forbiddingly hard to learn the new vocabulary of Heidegger, as to understand that our inner life is as visual, and I think that is maybe a very important clue, is as visual as the world being outside. If it's not as visual, if it imagery, pictures, even photo-like things, sketches, cannot be achieved, that means that you are under the dominion of the Cartesian blunt chopping of the world. And thereby you will be in a moment 22 situation. You need to access your inner world to understand modus. Modus cannot be understood from a distance. It engages you. You need to make that understanding, and you need to access the visual. It's absolutely important. The very idea that the inner life is just meanings, pointings, references, representations is to be unheimlich, not to be in the world, not be part of the world. And that also blocks the very understanding of what causes the problem. So here once more we have this twofold problem that Heidegger wants to sort of help us with. That is especially clear in division 2 of Being in Time. But I will make a lecture of that later today or tomorrow. Let's continue with the article of beer. None of this is specific to TSK. Anyone who has meditated has confronted these same experiences. If the meditative practice is following the breath, I generate the intention to follow the breath, followed by the decision to act on that intent. I then perform the act of focusing awareness on the breath. As the meditation continues, the mind might shift from the process of breathing, for instance, noticing an ache. Thoughts about the achy bodily region and then about the body in general appear in the mind, followed by images of activities linked to that ache. At that point, I may become aware that I have shifted away from the breath and, as a result, bring my attention back to the breath. Bringing my attention back is a mental action. How great. And it requires the same sequence as crossing the stream. Intention, decision, choice, and action. When obstacles arise, when I get tired, distressed, bored, lose motivation, or find other interest arising, I must use will to keep awareness on the breath. As those who have meditated for prolonged periods know, the effort becomes both mental and physical. All of the TSK exercises entail intention, choice, action sequence, maintained over time via will. Having practiced many TSK exercises a great deal over the past 20 years, these are processes I have struggled with frequently. I have also used the TSK books as text in both graduate and undergraduate classes, and my students report similar struggles, invariably remarking on how difficult and demanding the practices are. This is one reason why I find it puzzling that the discussion of choice and will is notably absent from the TSK books. The TSK exercises involve awareness and attention, are also not discussed extensively. I might add that is one of the main points in Being in Time. It's widely discussed and it rushes through the pages, but as I said before, sorry to repeat myself, so hard to grasp. The following section explores how awareness and attention relate to choice and will. In tracking their presenting, it will become apparent how moment to moment we make choices based on intentions. Awareness and intention, the next paragraph. Awareness can be likened to a pervasive field that surrounds and pervades the experiences or the subject. On the one hand, awareness is so encompassing that it has no specifiable meaning. On the other hand, it is so pervasive that it lies at the heart of what we experience and what we know. Attention brings into focus various aspects of what it is or could be in awareness. Awareness continues, attention focuses. Like a spotlight, attention makes central its object. In some ways, awareness, experience are the same. In other ways, attention guides experience, brings it into being and shifts it from this to that. One might describe this in the following way. Experience is what attention takes away from awareness. We can clarify this through an example. I sit at my computer struggling to find the words to capture awareness. How good. I am vaguely aware that my fingers are on the keyboard and I see but do not read the words on the monitor. My awareness is primarily focused inside on my thoughts and the words I will type to capture awareness. Listen now. Awareness is captured by the typing of the words. This is pulling down awareness from the field of attention to put it into something that becomes action. And action is the typing on the keyboard of the very word action. To make it even more clear, the thoughts occurs. Each time I capture awareness, it slips away. I smile at the irony. My task is more like pointing than writing a definitive exposition. And wherever and however I point, awareness is there, here, and in between. And this is exactly the point, because the modus of Descartes, René Descartes, is the modus of unawareness. There is unawareness in Descartes. Because the sheer understanding, it is what Heidegger is pointing to. And the modern way of lacking understanding is our modus of technological knowledge, or the amnesia, or the lack of understanding being as the big thing, or our lack of finding what really matters to us, to be close to anything. And I would say a lack of awareness, and this is not a simple thing, but a lack of awareness is behind the modus of reductionism, or the idea that we are situated in a world that is completely alien to us. That is in itself a lack of awareness. So you see here, this is one of the problems of the project of Heidegger, that Momentum 22, that the very awareness he's pointing to is the awareness you need to understand what he's writing. So his idea is little by little sort of disrupt the foundation of the Cartesian division of subject-object in what you could call the theoretical manner. But at the same time, he is inviting you to further your awareness, because your awareness is the only chance of understanding on what he writes. Without that awareness, that encompassing feature in you, that modus, will not be, and therefore understanding cannot come. And I would say Heidegger is possibly the only philosopher, maybe on the exception of Derrida, that you are needed to change yourself in order to understand. Otherwise, understanding will not come. And I'm struck by so many interpreters of Heidegger have not come to that understanding. Dreyfus mentioned somewhere that 60–70% of the interpreters never went over that obstacle. and that is in the first division of being in time. I don't shy away from problems. This makes me even more interested. As always, when I learn that something is very hard to understand, I would try even harder. But we started with Heidegger maybe 2 years ago. We made 120 lectures or maybe if you're listening now, Kalle, you remember that little cabin without water, without toilet, isolated for the rest of civilization, and how we went through 120 lectures about Heidegger. I think they were absolutely foundational in the understanding that's coming now. But I also realized I had no idea that this was to wait for me round the corner. Once Heidegger came back 2 years later, reopened, and all of a sudden, a lot of thanks to Mark Withrell and Hubert Dreyfus, long live his memory, those things are becoming increasingly clear. And I also realized that my background, both like the background that goes back even further to my university time and my almost obsession with logic, linguistics, semiotics, semantics, and so forth, they had been obstacles. The only exception there being phonetics, but phonetics in some ways, always thanks to Per, always pointed to a greater reality, a reality that was measurable, and in that measurable situation, we were always part of the experiment. We always did that. We were encouraged to participate with our own voices. We could see our voices. And for instance, I then understood when I tried to pronounce a long syllable like, let's say, university, already in the U, the rest of the word is present. That could be seen on an oscilloscope. So there is a certain change of the U of university already. And one could say, in the U, the whole word is already present. Whereas one staircase up in the linguistic sections, they took everything apart. They were purely Cartesian in their thinking. So they neglected all sorts of ideas that everything could sit together. And that was the reason that there were an actual geographical division in the very department, where poor Per had to be happy with being in the cellar, and on top of him resided John Antwood, as I usually call him in these lectures. This is not his real name. Will you pause there, or should we stop? Pause first.